Hi guys, so in this video we're going to be making a simple, cute pouch. You can use this pouch for so many things. You can put it inside a bigger bag, you can take it with you when you're traveling, you can give it away as a gift, you can add straps on the side and even make it a purse, whatever you want. I included a link in the description where you can download this pattern and follow along with this tutorial so you can make your own cute little pouch. Let's get to it. So here are the things you're going to need. You're going to need your pattern pieces, some thread, a lint roller, an iron, your rotary cutter, a pair of scissors, some pins, your fusible fleece. However, you don't need the fleece, and I'll get into why you could do without it in just a bit. Your outer fabric, I have two fabrics here because I decided I wanted to put the fur on the bottom of the pouch, and your lining fabric. Ignore the pattern piece that says strap loop. Originally I wanted to make this a purse, but then I decided on just a simple pouch, so I didn't need the strap. Also, you're going to need two zippers. This one is 9 inches and this one is 12. So I'm going to start by cutting out my two outer pieces of fabric. So I'm going to make sure my fabric is folded over so that I have two layers that I'm cutting out at the same time. This is black faux leather, by the way. I've got my two outer pieces now, so I'm going to set those aside and work on the next ones. So because I decided to add some plush faux fur on the bottom of the front of the pouch, this is also considered part of my outer fabric. So I want the fur to start just under where you see it says purse body. Again, it's not a purse. I wanted a purse at first, and then I was like, never mind, let's just do a pouch. I wanted to start around here, so I'm actually going to make a mark on either side of the pattern piece right above where it says purse body to give myself some room for seam allowance when I sew. Then I'm going to trace around the bottom portion of the pattern piece, remove the pattern piece, and then draw a line connecting the two marks that I made. By the way, I know a Sharpie is not the proper marking tool. I just really don't know where my fabric markers went, so this will do. I'm gonna cut this out and then move on to the lining fabric. This is where the lint roller comes in handy to clean up all that extra fur that got away. I'm going to cut out two lining pieces the same exact way that I cut out two pieces from the faux leather. Now from this lining fabric, I'm also going to cut out 4 pocket pieces. This pouch is going to have 2 pockets on the inside. Because I need 4 pocket pieces, I'm going to make sure that the lining fabric is folded on itself twice so that I'm cutting on 4 layers at once. Now we're going to cut out 2 layers of fusible fleece. So I put some asterisks because you could do without this if your outer fabric is thick enough. My faux leather is thick enough, but I decided to still go with the fusible fleece just to give it a little extra stability. This is fusible fleece, however, it was very difficult trying to fuse the fleece to the faux leather because I couldn't fuse on the leather side, which is what you would normally do if you were working with like cotton or something, because I didn't want to melt the leather. And it was also difficult trying to fuse from the fleece side, so I actually decided to just sew around the perimeter of the pattern pieces rather than fuse them together with the iron. So now that we have all of our pieces cut out, it's time to sew. So if you're making the outside of your pouch all one solid color or fabric, you can skip this step. But if you're doing like me, I am going to start with the faux fur facing the faux leather, right sides together. Now I'm going to place the fur where I think it should go, to where when I fold it back down after sewing it, the bottom of the fur will match up perfectly with the bottom of the leather. As you can see, the fur kind of surpasses the bottom of the leather a little bit, so I pinned it too low. I'm going to take the pins out, readjust, and then fold it back down to see if it's in a better position. So now you can see the leather and the fur match up just about perfectly, so this is exactly where I'm going to leave the pins, and I'm going to sew at about a 1/2 inch seam allowance. Now our leather and our fur are one piece. Now I'm going to attach the fleece to the outer pieces. Normally if I was using cotton or something else, I would fuse it with the iron, but I'm not going to do that. So I am going to sew around the perimeter of the entire pattern piece to make the fleece and the outer pieces one piece. Now that they're all one piece, I'm going to set them aside. Now we're going to start working on the pockets. So one of the pockets is going to have a zipper, and then the other one is going to be divided into two smaller pockets. So we're going to start by taking two of the rectangles and placing them right sides together. And you're going to sew with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance, leaving about a 2-inch gap at the bottom to turn the whole thing right side out. Once you've turned it right side out, go ahead and fold in the edges of the gap that you left open and then press it down with an iron. Sew with about a 1/2 inch seam allowance along the top of the pocket. This is solely for decorational purposes. If you prefer to have two equally sized smaller pockets, then you can sew directly down the middle. However, I prefer one bigger pocket and one smaller one. The smaller one can be for like pens or pencils, and the bigger one can be for maybe a mirror or a phone or something. That's how I prefer it, so that's how I'm going to sew it when I attach it to the lining. So according to this pattern piece, the pocket should be placed about 1.5 inches down from the top and in the middle, so that there is about 2 3/4 inches on each side of the pocket. So I'm going to fold the lining in half and place a pin, and I'm also going to fold the pocket in half and place a pin so that I can line them up in the center. I'm going to measure down 1.5 inches from the pin that's in the lining so that I know exactly where to place the pocket. I'm going to pin the pocket in place and sew along the sides and the bottom of the pocket, making sure to catch the folded in edges of the gap we left at the bottom. Right now we have one big pocket, and you can leave it like that if you prefer that, but at this point I'm going to go ahead and divide this pocket into two. I'm going to mark where I want it to be divided and then sew with the straight stitch. Now we have two pockets. Moving on to the other lining, so this is the one that's going to have the zipper. I'm going to cut out the rectangle for the zipper out of the pattern piece so that I can use it as a guide to draw the rectangle onto the lining. I'm going to line up the pattern piece with the wrong side of the lining and trace the rectangle onto the lining. Make the same marks inside of the rectangle that was on the pattern. Place a pin from the wrong side of the lining along the top of the rectangle so that when I flip it over onto the right side, I know exactly where the top of that rectangle is. It's here. I'm going to take one of the pocket pieces, fold it in half and mark the center with a pin, fold the lining in half and mark the center of the lining with the pin, and then place the pocket piece right sides together just about 1/2 inch above where I marked the top of that rectangle. Pin everything in place and then sew along the outside of the rectangle for the zipper, but don't sew the lines on the inside. Now take a small pair of scissors and cut along the lines on the inside of the rectangle. Push the pocket through the slit that you just cut open and try your best to smooth it out. Once you have everything smoothed out, go ahead and press it with an iron. Place your zipper in the opening and then pin your lining and the zipper together. It's completely fine if the zipper is longer than the opening. You can just snip off the excess zipper after you sew it to the lining. Sew along the opening with about 1/8 inch seam allowance. Take the other pocket piece and place it right sides together with the pocket that you just sewed on, with the wrong side of the pocket facing up. Pin the two pieces together and then sew along the raw edge with about 1/4 inch seam allowance, completely closing it off. Make sure to push the lining out of the way as you sew, as you're only going to be sewing through the pockets and not the lining. Now you have your zipper pocket and this lining is finished. Now we're going to work with the outer fabric again. So you're going to take the outer fabric and place it right side down on the top of the zipper, like so. Make sure you pin the fabric about a ½ inch past the start of the zipper. Pin everything in place and sew at about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Fold the zipper back and then top stitch with about a scant 1/8 seam allowance from the fabric. Repeat with the other outer fabric piece, making sure you're placing it right sides together with the one you've already sewn. Moving on to the lining fabric, you're going to fold just about 1/8 of an inch of the top of the fabric onto the wrong side and then press it down. Do the same for the other lining. Line up the edge of the lining right along the edge of the fleece that you see peeking out, making sure you've just covered that fleece. Pin in place and then sew with a scant 1/8 seam allowance. You want to get very close to the edge of the lining. It should look nice and clean like this. Repeat with the other lining. Fold the two outer pieces right sides together and then fold the lining pieces right sides together. Pin all 4 layers in place and then sew around the perimeter of the entire pouch, leaving about a 2 to 3 inch gap at the bottom of the lining so that you can turn everything right side out. Also, with the exception of all 4 corners, sew with about a ½ inch seam allowance. Cut off as much of the seam allowance as you can, being very careful not to snip your stitches. Open up all 4 corners, flatten them, and then stitch across with about a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Pull everything right side out and poke all the corners out. Fold in the edges of the gap you left open, press it down, and then stitch with about a scant 1/8 seam allowance. Push the lining back inside, and then you are done. You can fit lots of stuff in here. You can fit pens, pencils, markers, hand sanitizer, tissues, a phone, feminine products, a mirror, makeup, pretty much whatever you want. I hope you give this pattern a try and let me know what you think. I'm gonna try to get in the habit of uploading 1 to 2 sewing videos a week, guys, so stay tuned. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and thanks so much for watching, guys. Bye-bye.